If I had $10 for every time I ran into somebody who told me that they were spiritual but not religious, I would have a lot of money. But I'm always a little confused by that, because I think, okay, I think not religious means you just don't go to church, right? You don't like church, or something about church you don't like. But what do you mean spiritual? How are you spiritual? And sometimes if it's a relaxed setting, I might ask, tell me about your spirituality then. And because a lot of times I think they're aiming for transcendence, something that gets them outside of themselves. So great piece of music or art or being in nature or something like that helps them to just there's something bigger than me, and I get lost in that thing that's bigger than me, and that's spirituality. And I know as a young man, I loved going camping. And so I'd either by myself or with others in the mountains or in the forest or alongside a lake, to sit by a fire at night in the quiet, in the wilderness. It's powerful. I mean, God seemed to be very present at those times. I remember one day, I was a sophomore in college, summer, we're laying on the North Shore of Lake Superior on a rocky beach, looking up at the Milky Way, which was just very vibrant, and the northern lights were cutting across the Milky Way. So it made a great big cross in the sky, and I think, all right, God, I guess I should be a priest. There it is. Big cross in the sky, that was just for me. Spiritual. The moments of transcendence. Moments where God feels really, really close. I just wish I could magically do that anytime. Where I could say, I want God to feel real close right now. I need God right now. God, because I've been on a lot of camping trips where there's just a fire, just me and a fire. But sometimes God feels very close, very present. Other times, no. That's why we need church. Think, okay, if I could magically be spiritual all the time, then I don't need all the other stuff. I could just magically make God there. I think it's why Peter in today's gospel wants to put tents there. You know, he sees this amazing revelation. Jesus is there and in wonder, and Moses is there and Elijah. And what is Peter's response? I'm going to put up some tents. We're going to stay right here all the time. We'll just stay right here because this is so amazing. But Jesus doesn't even respond to him. The response comes from the Father saying, be quiet. Listen to my son. And what does Jesus say is, we're going down the mountain. We're going back. Because what he had told them before they went up the mountain, they didn't want to hear. They had been at Caesarea Philippi, where Jesus had asked them, who do you think that I am? And Peter had given the right response. You're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And Jesus says, great. You got it, Peter. We'll build our church on you. And then Jesus says, and I'm going to die. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to be tried. I'm going to be crucified. And Peter's response was, no way, God forbid that should ever happen to you. And Jesus calls him, Satan, get behind me, Satan. That's what just happened. So I think Jesus takes him up the mountain for that little bit of spirituality, that little bit of transcendence revelation, so that they would say, oh, okay, he is who he says he is, and now we can see we can make it through the tough days ahead. The insight is to give you strength for the rest of the journey, because the journey is not always easy. But we also can't stay on the mountain. That's not where we are meant to be. I find the first reading today kind of interesting as to why the church puts that with the Transfiguration, the call of Abraham. It's just a little snippet of Abraham's story. You might recall I did a whole bunch of it a few months ago, where I talked about how Abraham forgot what God tells him right here, that he is to be a blessing. Because if you know the Abraham story, most of the time he's not acting like that. That's what God has called him to be. You're supposed to be a blessing for everybody. For everybody, a blessing. Everybody, a blessing. And he only remembers the part that he's going to be a great nation. And so he goes around acting like he's going to be a great nation and is a jerk and gets in trouble a whole bunch of times, gets his wife in trouble. It's a mess. It isn't until those three guys show up and he cooks a nice meal for them, where he's a blessing to these strangers, that the story begins to work. He's called to be a blessing. And I think, so why did the church put that with the Transfiguration, unless it assumes you're all really good Old Testament rememberers, and you remember Abraham's story, and you can say, oh yeah, Abraham needed those spiritual moments too, because most of the time he was screwing up. And so he needed those little high points with God so that he could keep going. Clearly in the second reading, Paul is reminding Timothy, hey, Timothy, you know what? Following Jesus is not always easy. And there will be suffering. And there will be challenges. Not every day is easy. Not every day do you have the mountaintop. Not every day is God really strongly present. So at those kind of days, when you're in the midst of suffering, remember what God has done for you. And remember who you are. And remember what lies ahead. Because that's what religion is about. That's why we have church. So that you and I can remember those moments of transcendence. Those moments at the mountaintop when we don't feel like it. We can support one another and encourage one another. We can help each other do what the Father told Peter to do, to listen to him, listen to Jesus. And then who knows? Maybe step by step, little by little, those mountaintop moments will become part of our interior. And it won't be so hard to find them anymore.